25th of February 2022, Tears for Fears released their 7th studio album, the first album in 18 years, The Tipping Point. Let's talk all about that. Hello and welcome to Piano and Keyboard Artist, where we discuss the artists related to pianos, keyboards and synthesizers. Tears for Fears are back, and they've just released their 7th studio album. So I can tell you just off the bat, really impressed with this album, really enjoyed it. There are no surprises, and what I mean by that is they've been away for a long time, but it's not like they've come back and tried to rock the boat with something radical and look, this is Tears for Fears, unlike you've ever heard us before. I don't want to say it's predictable, but it's just a pleasingly satisfying Tears for Fears record. You would listen to that, and the moment it starts, you go, okay, that sounds like Tears for Fears. Great songwriting. It's very grown up. It's very deep. It's very thoughtful. But then again, their music always was. And I'm always surprised when you go back to their earlier songs and you listen to songs like, you know, From the Hurting and stuff like that. Just the depth and the emotional complexity of those songs. And then you've got to remind yourself that they were in their 20s when they did that. Now, that's not to be condescending to you if you're in your 20s, but it's just there is a as a songwriter and as a human, we develop life experience as we get older. So this album definitely was not a letdown. I like the fact that they are true to themselves. They didn't sort of like jump in on the sort of hip bandwagon to kind of be cool and credible. No names mentioned. Duran Duran. The Future Past album from Duran Duran is an album I want to review soon. And Duran Duran, just sidetracking slightly, are a band that typically like to remain current whilst doing their thing. I recently asked Nick Rhodes what that was all about.
Well, the real challenge, of course, is always the dilemma of trying to remain current, but at the same time retaining the aesthetic and Duran sound that everyone is accustomed to. And of course, that is something that I take on board, because the three unrelated Taylors are not that talented, and Simon is just the singer. So the onus is upon me to make sure that the standards are retained and upheld, because I am the controller.
Nick Rhodes there from Duran Duran. Okay, let's run through this album in the track listing order. The opening track, No Small Thing, sees it come in with a typical sort of like thoughtful singer-songwriter, almost like storytelling approach. It's just simple. It's from the F to the C, from the F to the C, and then it variates down to the A minor. Get your sweets from the candy man, la 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 la. And the sort of vocal tone that Roland uses, I don't want to turn this into a vocal video, but I have mentioned in previous videos how Roland's voice has got a tremendous amount of color to it. And what I mean by that is he can make so many different types of sounds. I do like the sort of soft, thoughtful approach, and then as the track builds, just really and it just builds and builds and builds, and great song. This song didn't instantly grab me, but with the time I've given it, it has grown on me. We're then straight into the feature track, which is The Tipping Point. Very, very hypnotic, and the sort of hypnotic feel is made up by this motive here. And as the song progresses through all the variations, it's basically this 3-chord part. You know that I can love you more. It's very, very haunting. It's almost like a ghost that's haunting you. And this part sort of, playing throughout the song is kind of like the feature sort of melodic hook that kind of, the song kind of lingers on. After you've listened to it, it really does have a haunting type feeling. And as you know, Roland's wife unfortunately passed away, and therefore I believe that a lot of the sadness and lyrical content is based on the passing of his wife. It is very, very haunting. Now, I did go to the release talk. There was album release talk. It was on the 21st of February on Monday, and it was at the Earth Theatre, and I went there with shout out to Lloyd and Ed, who went along with me to that. And thank you, Ed, for buying me this CD. And I've indeed used that to listen for this review. And that talk was very interesting on the 21st of February. It was obviously on the Monday, so just a few days before the album was released. And it was good to actually see Roland and Kurt in person there. And they were being interviewed by a lady from The Guardian, I believe. And it was kind of like just a Q&A on the album. And they played a few tracks from the album. And they took, questions from the audience. And I must say, when I heard the song Rivers of Mercy, it was instantly likable. But we'll get to that a bit later. Roland and Kurt always present themselves really well. They always come across as very thoughtful and intelligent and articulate. And I must say, I do love Roland's long grey hair. He's kind of embracing his age and everything. And he just looks like a guru. And once again, along with the way that they've aged tastefully, it comes back to what I said about the sound of this record. It goes with them. If you look at them and you listen to the music, it suits them. They're not trying to be hip and cool, but they are hip and cool. But they're not trying to sort of pander to the newer generation or whatever. They're just doing what they do, and that is why I've been very, very happy with this record, because it was true to its core and true to who Roland and Kurt are as artists. We're then into track 3, which is Long Time, and this is one of my personal favorites. I think some people have sort of dismissed this as an album track, but I really, really like it, especially when we get to the chorus, which is... Very, very melodic. And of course, when it gets to that chorus, we have this female vocal, and it just sounds beautifully sort of velvety and silky. The production on this record is very, very good. And also the sound of it is, as I say, it's very sort of traditional Tears for Fears. It's real sort of what I like to call band music. Of course there are synthesizers and things, and modern production techniques are used, but it is fundamentally band music. It's real sort of music that could be jammed and played live without the need for too much backing tracks and production. Track 4, Break the Man. Personally, for me, this song is an instant skip now. That's not a bad song, but to me, it's just an album track. Now, if you were to look at the Spotify counter, if that's anything to go by in terms of how popular a song is, and it probably is quite accurate, then I would be mistaken, because this song, according to the Spotify counter, shows that it is indeed one of the most popular songs. I mean, if you look at the opening track, No Small Thing, it's got like 2 million streams, but of course that's obvious because it's the first track, and then the feature track, The Tipping Point, they're over 3.5 million, and that's obviously because people, the first track has a lot because that's the first track people go to, and then of course the feature track being The Tipping Point, that's obviously being the reason that has so many views. But going on to look at how many plays all these songs have got, Break the Man, with almost 2 million streams there, is definitely one of the favorites. So what is it about this song that I don't like? Well, I don't dislike it. It's just that, for me, Tears for Fears were always brilliant. And I don't want to ramble off the list because there were so many great songs, but songs like Mad World and, you know, that real sort of yearning, and songs like the Tipping Point, Rivers of Mercy, Women in Change, you know, that real sort of deep emotional kind of yearning. Personally, this song to me is very disposable. It's a real sort of like feel-good song. It's a real sort of like, I'm driving down on the highway, I've got the hood and the top down. It's kind of like, I'm going now to do the school run, I'm gonna go and do the shopping, and then it's, I'm going home to do the ironing, break the man. Okay, I'm sorry if I've just trashed the song for you, but to me personally, it's a skip now. Once again, it's not a bad song, because for those of you who are watching who are younger, and to us people who have been around a bit longer, there used to be a thing called vinyl. And that was the great thing about vinyl records was, you know, you didn't skip, you would sort of listen to a song. And the track listing of an album is very, very important, because the arc and the storytelling, and that is why track listing is not done for no reason. Track listing and the actual placement of a track on a record is important. So far as the storytelling arc goes on this record, this song does fit in nicely. And I must say the track listing and the album flow and the arc and the way the songs flow into each other are very, very well done. So Break the Man does belong on this album. I'm just saying, for me, it's an instant skip, and I've spent a lot of time explaining a song that I'm not very crazy about. Right, let's move on to the next track. My Demons, probably the most sort of like, I am the Demolition Man, very radical and dun dun dun. And indeed, in there, in the talk I went to, I think it was Roland who said something along the lines of, don't quote me, that if Tears for Fears were going to be doing a song like The Weeknd, so to speak, this would be them being like The Weeknd. This song is, once again, it's not one of my favorites. It is, according to the Spotify counter, one of the sort of favorite songs on the album. As I say, for me personally, I like Tears for Fears when they're being a bit more gloomy and moody. But this is a good song, a lot of edge, very intense. My demons! And I just like the opening line. I am the Demolition Man. And once again, as I said in the beginning of the video, Roland has this tonality to his voice. He's got so many different colors. But this particular tone that he uses, I am the Demolition Man, it's kind of like that tone he used in the song Sowing the Seeds of Love. There's a part where he goes, if you're a wanted man, shout about it. Kind of like, it has like a twang to it, and I really like it. Roland is able to actually, he's got so many colors to his voice. That's not a technical term, by the way. Colors and tonalities. And in fact, he's got so many tonalities and colors to his voice that he can change his voice in so many different ways that very often when I was younger and I'd be listening to some of their records, I'd be like, who's that? Is that a guest singer? There are so many examples of this, but one of the examples that's just jumped into my head now is I'm remembering the song Cold from the 1993 Elemental album, where he goes, the cold is shoulder cast in metal, frozen to the bone, to rely on hook, line and sinker, water sinker, sinking like a stone, you'll be better off alone. Okay, I've probably got to warm up before I do that. When I heard that song, Cold, the first time, those opening lines, I thought, is that a woman singing? Because there's just like a feminine type quality to his voice in a beautiful way. Without getting sidetracked, Roland has so many different tonalities and colors to his voice. Now, I know I've given Roland a lot of praise here, and let's not take anything away from Kurt. Kurt's voice is amazing on this album. In fact, I think Roland and Kurt's voices have always complemented each other perfectly. And indeed, when Roland went solo for a while, I did miss Kurt, because I think the combination of their voices is stunning. So once again, My Demons, great track so far as the album's concerned. Not one of my favorites, but pretty radical and out there and a lot of fun. We then come to one of the feature tracks on this album, Rivers of Mercy. And indeed, that is when Roland was interviewed. I think he said that's probably his favorite track on the album. It is unashamedly, really obviously leaning towards their mega hit, which was Women in Chains. And Roland talks about the song being sort of, because it was kind of done during the first lockdown, and he was, at his English countryside home, and he said they were having like a Mediterranean summer, and just looking outside and the sun shining and this beautiful weather. We're not allowed to go out and do anything. And the way Roland explained it, and then when you listen to the song, he explains it well, because it's exactly as Roland said. It's this contrast. You look out the window, it's this beautiful sun shining, and then when you turn the TV on and you watch the news, there's just madness and chaos. And that is why, indeed, the song starts off with a siren and, a gunshot and the madness, and then it goes off into this beautiful melodic journey, which is very reminiscent of Woman in Chains. And indeed, this song, when I heard it the first time, it's not often that something can kind of tear me up instantly when I hear it the first time. Usually for me, songs take a while to grow on me. But indeed, when I heard this song for the first time at that launch talk that I went to, it really, really did touch me. And it is indeed a highlight. It's very, very tender, very beautiful. And it's fundamentally these three chords. So obviously there are more chords to it. But this is a real sort of Tears for Fears thing that they do. And indeed, they do this the same with the song The Tipping Point. Although there are several chord changes and interesting, melodic parts in the song, there is always a very simple melodic motive that runs through it. In the case of The Tipping Point, it's the, you know that I can love you more. And that keeps going, and that kind of stays in your head. And indeed, with this as well, despite all the chord changes, it comes back to this fundamental three-chord part. And also with Tears for Fears songwriting, it's kind of, I don't want to say conventional, because I don't mean that in a disrespectful, predictable kind of way. This band is all about, to me personally, they're all about great songs and emotion. And that is what I like about them. They never seem to go, okay, how can we shock people? What's the most obscure chord change? They don't seem to push the boundaries, let's say like a band like Depeche Mode would, which is a completely different band. I don't want to compare apples and pears. With Tears for Fears, to me, it's all about emotion and presenting the song in the most honest and beautiful way, and not needing to go down a very radical and overproduced kind of direction. So that is why it has kind of like a traditional type of sound to it. They just steer clear from needing to be radical in order to get their ideas across. And I think I've over-explained that, because I think with Tears for Fears, it's all about the emotion, and you definitely feel it in their music because of that. Now, coming back to track listing once again, this song, Rivers of Mercy, follows perfectly on the heels of My Demons. Now, once again, you see how My Demons kind of builds it, and it's quite an intense song. And then just to get this thoughtful, melancholy sound with Rivers of Mercy. And this, once again, highlights the importance of storytelling and an album. Rivers of Mercy follows with the very, very deep Please Be Happy. One of the best vocals I've heard him do, and he's done many, many good vocals. Just those opening lines, I just got the visions of Roland's late wife, and I just feel that these lyrics are literally about that. And when you know that and you listen to it, it makes it quite hard to listen to. We then come on to Master Plan, which has a real sort of like traditional sounding, approach so far as the chords move and everything, but great. And I like the variation, the way it goes and then changes into something else. And very, very musical, very, very melodic. This song, for some reason, reminds me a little bit of Sowing the Seeds of Love, although it's not sonically the same. There's just something about it that reminds me of that. I don't know if it's the tempo and the feel or the vibe, but there is something that reminds me of it. Track 9, End of Night, and this one too has a very sort of hypnotic melodic riff. course, that melodic line is played on a synthesizer. I always demonstrate songs on a straightforward piano, and you know the reason I do that is because once you strip all the production and electronics and production elements away, you can actually hear how beautiful the songs are in their sort of vanilla form. And once again, just using that simple that's a typical Tears for Fears thing to do, is within a song which has a lot of changes, there is a part of the song which has a very simple, simple melodic part which kind of sticks with you. So when the song's finished, all you remember is that do, 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 do. It's the same with Tipping Point. It's the same with Rivers of Mercy. It was the same in Woman in Chains, and I will demonstrate that in another Tears for Fears video, I promise. Track 10, Stay, slightly more down tempo. And that is a perfect way to finish a very, very good and enjoyable album. So generally, I did enjoy this album. To repeat myself, I like the fact that when they write the songs, they go, okay, here are the songs. How are we going to present these songs in the way that makes them sound the most emotional and authentic that we can? At least that's what I'm reading from what they do. It's not like, oh, how can we make this current and cool and edgy, and you know, how can we get a younger audience? None of that. It's all about the authenticity and the emotion, and the emotion really, really runs through this album. I think it's very, very well balanced. I like the sound of it, and I like the fact that it is unashamedly Tears for Fears. It sounds like them, and you know, as far as I'm concerned, Tears for Fears, it's not the production, it's the songs, and it is Roland and Kurt's voices in unison which form these songs. And once again, you could strip everything away, and if you just had a piano and those two voices, that is Tears for Fears. So what am I going to score this? Let's jump into the 5 questions. Question 1. What is the most radical song on this album? And what I mean by that is radical meaning which song stood out as radical, whether I liked it or not. I would say the most radical song on this album to me is My Demons, for many reasons. Question 2, if I was to lose a song from this album, or another way of phrasing it is, which is the song that I've skipped the most? Well, for me, that's easy. That's Break the Man. Question 3, which is my favorite song on this album? I instantly liked Rivers of Mercy, and I think that's probably the song that resonates with me the most. So I'm going to go with Rivers of Mercy. Question 4, which song did I not like initially, but it grew on me? I would probably say track 1, the opening track. It really starts off, and it didn't really do much for me, but obviously living with it for a while, it is, to me, one of the better songs on the album. And finally, question 5, what am I going to rate this album out of 10? Well, once again, I think I've said everything. Great songwriting, great production, nothing over the top radical, nothing pretentious, just good, honest emotion. I'm going to give The Tipping Point 8 out of 10. So a very good album, highly recommended, and it's good to see Roland and Kurt being at the top of their game. You know, vocally, you know, there are some artists of the same age that are kind of struggling, but these two are doing great things. Great music, and it's good that the new music that's come out is still good. Now, my friend, it's up to you. Participate in the 5 questions. Question 1, which is the most radical track on this album to you? Question 2, which is the song which you skipped the most? Or in other words, which song would you get rid of if you had to get rid of one? Question 3, which is your favorite song on this album? Question 4, which is the song that you didn't initially like but grew on you the most? And question 5, what would you rate The Tipping Point out of 10? And with that, my friends, I hope you've enjoyed this. Check out in my previous video history. I've done some previous Tears for Fears videos, not many, and I plan to do more. I hope you've enjoyed this. Please subscribe, and I will see you on the next video. Lots of love. Adios.